Facebook VP Nick Clegg slams abhorrent Donald Trump for his looting and shooting tweet and says the website has already removed a number of ads from the president's election campaign. Clegg told the Today program Trump's controversial tweet was abhorrent, said though that it was not up to Facebook to censor governments online. Doing so will ensure the website's users can hold politicians to account. He said the former Lib Dem leader said, "Politicians always make caricatured claims about their own virtues." Clegg added that Facebook will allow governments to say they'll deploy force. He said the platform looked hard at what went wrong in 2016 U.S. election. The social media giant has promised a new measures to boost voter turnout by James Robinson and Alice Karkia for Mail Online, published 3:05 BST, the 17th of June 2020, updated 17:01 BST, the 17th of June 2020. Facebook's Nick Clegg has slammed Donald Trump's controversial looting and shooting tweet as abhorrent, and revealed the tech giant has removed a number of ads from the president's election campaign. But the former Deputy Prime Minister of the UK, now Facebook's head of global affairs, said it was not their website's job to censor governments and defended the firm's decision not to remove the post. In an interview with the BBC, Nick was asked what he thought of Trump's statement on Facebook and Twitter that when the looting starts, the shooting starts. The inflammatory remark came amid riots over the death of George Floyd, an unarmed black man who was killed in Minneapolis when an officer knelt on his neck for 9 minutes. Clegg said he found the comments abhorrent but insisted defending free expression is important, as he explained why Facebook had not taken action against the post. In contrast, Twitter hid Trump's tweet 2 hours after it was put up online and added a notice which said the post was glorifying violence. Facebook has today insisted it will not block or censor Donald Trump, pictured in the upcoming U.S. presidential election, but has instead promised to increase its transparency while launching a new voting information center. Trump's 1 a.m. tweet described looters as thugs and warned that the federal government would assume control with shooting if necessary after protesters set fire to a police precinct. Twitter added its second warning to a Donald Trump tweet in 4 days by covering the president's message about the Minneapolis riots with a comment that it glorified violence. Nick Clegg has defended Facebook's decision not to adopt a similar measure, keeping Trump's post visible. Speaking to BBC Radio 4's Today program as Facebook launched a voting information center ahead of the U.S. presidential election later this year, Nick said the website's system allows people to scrutinize what politicians like Trump are saying, and hold them to account by voting in elections. "I think the fundamental judgment Facebook took in that instance was that, in the end, the best way to hold politicians to account for what they say, the good, the bad and the ugly, is to make sure that people can hear what they say," he said. He claimed Trump was saying that he felt the governor of Minnesota had not taken aggressive enough action at the time rioting was breaking out. In other words, Mr. Trump was threatening state action. "And like all social media companies, we allow governments to say that they are going to deploy force if they wish to." Clegg added that, "I think defending free expression, when it is controversial to do so, is important because it is the way to hold politicians to account." He suggested that those who don't like Donald Trump should attack what he says. He added that, in the end, if you don't like what someone says, yes, you can try and censor or silence them, but reiterated that the post had already been widely circulated online. He claimed the way to hold people to account is to criticize, mock, attack and pillory what they say, and said this is what Trump has experienced since making the post. Former Liberal Democrat leader Clegg added, "Politicians always make caricatured claims about their own virtues and caricatured claims about the vices of their opponents. The idea that a private company, that in a sense has got no legitimacy to act as an arbiter of political truth as political opponents slug it out, should intervene and say, you can't say this and you can't say that." I think people would feel quite rightly that Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook don't have the legitimacy to do that. The former Liberal Democrat, Nick Clegg, pictured, now a boss within the social media giant's European operation, said the best response to those who do not like what Mr. Trump says is to vote. Nick also confirmed he was part of the decision-making process Facebook took to allow Trump's post to remain visible. When asked if politicians could literally say anything on the website, Clegg responded that Facebook would remove material that posed an immediate physical threat. He cited the taking down of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro's posts about bogus cures for the coronavirus as an example of this measure. Clegg refuted claims the tech giant had not done enough and said, "We have removed a number of ads from Donald Trump over the last several months." Facebook has faced mounting criticism for failing to remove all able posts made by Trump that spread misinformation about mail voting. The former deputy prime minister went on to defend the website's stance not to fact-check political adverts. He argued the platform should not be the arbiter of political truth and that Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook do not have the legitimacy to tell politicians what they can and cannot say. Clegg's comments come as the website today announced it will allow users to turn off political adverts in the run-up to the US presidential election, while promising to block adverts from foreign state-controlled media. The social media giant will also launch a new voting information center, giving Facebook and Instagram users details on registering to vote, polling places and voting by mail. It is part of the American firm's plan to tackle fake news and foreign interference in the upcoming U.S. election, following accusations of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. But writing in the Daily Telegraph today, Clegg, who has worked for Facebook for a year and a half, insisted the platform believed in free expression. He said the best way for those who do not like what Mr. Trump is saying to respond is to vote '. He also said the company had looked hard at what went wrong in relation to Russian interference in the 2016 US election, which saw fabricated articles and misinformation spread from Russian government-controlled media across social media platforms. This image provided by Facebook shows screens of Voting Information Center. Facebook is launching a widespread effort to boost U.S. voter turnout and show authoritative information about voting, even as it doubles down on its stance to let politicians like President Donald Trump post misinformation about voting. It comes as Facebook also announced a raft of new measures which it hopes will engage voters in the upcoming U.S. presidential election. The American-based social media giant is launching a voting information center on Facebook and Instagram that will include details on registering to vote, polling places and voting by mail. The information center will be much like Facebook's Coronavirus Information Center that was launched earlier this year and will draw information from state election officials and local election authorities. It will be prominently displayed on Facebook news feeds and on Instagram later in the summer. But the website will not remove all able posts by U.S. politicians, including President Donald Trump, which spread misinformation about postal voting. It comes amid an intense row between the president and Facebook's rival Twitter over its decision to fact-check a tweet by Mr. Trump surrounding misleading claims that mail-in ballots would lead to fraud. Mr. Clegg said, Facebook believes in free expression and the right of voters to hear what politicians are saying so they can be held to account. That does not mean politicians can say whatever they like. The line is drawn at speech that will cause imminent harm or suppress voting, and no one is exempt from that. But if people do not like what Mr. Trump or any other politician is saying, the best response is not to censor them, but to vote. His comments echo those by Facebook's CEO Mark Zuckerberg made last month. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, left, has reaffirmed his position that the platform should allow as much expression as possible. It follows a row between President Donald Trump, pictured right, and social media giants over his misleading claims that postal ballots in the U.S. presidential election will lead to voting fraud. He said, "I know many people are upset that we have left the president's posts up, but our position is that we should enable as much expression as possible unless it will cause imminent risk of specific harms or dangers spelled out in clear policies." In the USA Today opinion piece Tuesday, Zuckerberg reaffirmed that position. Ultimately, I believe the best way to hold politicians accountable is through voting, and I believe we should trust voters to make judgments for themselves, he wrote. That's why I think we should maintain as open a platform as possible, accompanied by ambitious efforts to boost voter participation. Facebook's free speech stance may have more to do with not wanting to alienate Trump and his supporters while keeping its business options open, critics suggest. Dipayan Ghosh, co-director of the Platform Accountability Project at Harvard Kennedy School, said Facebook does not want to tick off a whole swath of people who really believe the president and appreciate his words. In addition to the voting hub, Facebook will also now let people turn off political and social issue ads that display the paid-for-buy designation, meaning a politician or political entity funded it. Company is implementing the measure after announced the option back in January. Facebook will also block all ads in the US during the election period from state-controlled media organizations in other countries. Cernick wrote in The Telegraph that this provides a level of transparency far greater than anything which existed in the last US election or the Brexit referendum, and exceeds the transparency of political ads in print or broadcast media. Sarah Schiff, product manager who works on ads, cautioned that Facebook's systems aren't perfect and said she encourages users to report paid-for-buy ads they see if they have chosen not to see them. This image provided by Facebook shows screens of Voting Information Center. Facebook is launching a widespread effort to boost US voter turnout and show authoritative information about voting, even as it doubles down on its stance to let politicians like President Donald Trump post misinformation about voting. Earlier this month, President Trump was officially fact-checked by Twitter for suggesting that California's mail-in balloting initiative would lead to substantial voter fraud in the November general election. Trump also tweeted on Tuesday morning, "There is no way, zero, that mail-in ballots will be anything less than substantially fraudulent. Mailboxes will be robbed, ballots will be forged and even illegally printed out and fraudulently signed." He then insinuated that non-citizens could get ballots. The governor of California is sending ballots to millions of people. Anyone living in the state, no matter who they are or how they got there, will get one, the president said. That will be followed up with professionals telling all of these people, many of whom have never even thought of voting before, how, and for whom, to vote. The president ended the two-tweet tirade by saying, "This will be a rigged election. No way," said Trump, who votes in Florida absentee. By Tuesday afternoon, Twitter had labeled the tweets with a blue exclamation mark, prompting users to get the facts about mail-in ballots. Another page on the social media site called Trump's Tweets Unsubstantiated, according to fact-checkers from CNN, Washington Post and other mainstream news outlets. Let's block ads. Why?
Show your love for him. Click the link in description. Thanks for watching.